The Transfiguration, in biblical terms, is the moment at which Christ brings three disciples up to a mountain. He's seen bathed in light and talking to Moses and Elijah, the prophets of the past. More broadly, a transfiguration is when there's a metamorphosis. Someone undergoes a metamorphosis that entails some kind of spiritual improvement, which makes it a kind of intriguing title for the debut feature from Michael O'Shea, this New York-based filmmaker. This film popped up out of nowhere at Cannes last year. I didn't see it, but I saw in the programme that it was something to do with vampires, and I kept saying to people, oh, so is that the vampire film? And they kept saying, well, sort of. What it is definitely about is this teenage boy called Milo, who's played by Eric Ruffin, who grows up on a New York housing project. He lives with his elder brother, who's an ex-soldier, who is at home with PTSD. Now, there's no parents on the scene, and that part of the story is explained in the fullness of time. But in the first sequence in the film, we understand that Milo is a troubled young boy, and he has what might be described as vampiric predilections. He kills people and he drinks their blood. And in a very, quite kind of intriguingly staged sequence, you have someone walking into a public bathroom and hearing strange noises in a cubicle. Oh, there's 4 feet under the door. There's some rumpy-pumpy going on. It's not rumpy-pumpy, of course. It's something far more graphic and sinister. What isn't immediately clear, though, is whether he is actually a vampire or whether he's a disturbed young man who's sort of behaving like one, or whether even making that distinction is a meaningful one to make. Is there any difference between someone behaving like a vampire and actually being a vampire? However, he does find one kindred spirit who he feels he can open up to a little about vampires, and that is his neighbour Sophie, who's played by Chloe Levine. And here is a typically involved vampire lore literate conversation that the two of them have.
It's just, I bet the vampires in Twilight aren't very realistic.
There's no such thing as a realistic vampire.
There is. More realistic. Vampires don't twinkle.
Okay, so what are vampires like?
Well, I think it starts with drinking blood, like you have a need to. It's like when you have a cut on your finger when you're a little kid and you're sucking on it, but eventually that's not good enough. So you switch to animals and stuff like that, and then people, and you change a lot after the first person you kill. And you change a lot more after one after another. But I think when you first start out being a vampire, all this stuff you see in the movies doesn't really matter. Like, you can go out in the sun and you can eat garlic, and I don't even think the church stuff is even true. Like, maybe to religious vampires, And I don't think you get bit. I think it's like a disease you get.
Wow. Which book is this?
It's not a book, it's just how I think it is.
So there's an outrageously glib and reductive way to describe this film, and I'm going to do it because it does give you quite a clear sense of what it's going for. It basically falls exactly halfway between Twilight and Moonlight, in that you have this teenage couple in a sort of relationship, sort of not a relationship. They're outsiders. One of them has, as I said, vampiric predilections. And then you also have this young black boy from a very tough family background who is wrestling with his identity and wondering how to reconcile that identity with the world that surrounds him that seems very hostile towards it. Now, the fact that they have this slightly disparaging conversation about Twilight did exasperate me, because I think this film has more in common with Twilight than it would perhaps like to admit. It more positions itself, and it does so explicitly throughout, in the tradition of films like George A. Romero's Martin and Thomas Alfredson's Let the Right One In. It's a film about realistic vampires. What would vampires be like if they were actually in the world around us? Now, it's not a particularly scary film, and particularly the attack scenes happen at a distance. They're staged in a way that we are supposed to be curious and intrigued by what's happening rather than unnerved by them, although there is this use of this kind of surging Gaspar Noé bassy electronica that is supposed to, make your stomach start churning away by itself, which it absolutely does. And weirdly, in one of the attack scenes in Central Park, the tramp that Milo attacks is played by Lloyd Kaufman, the founder of Troma Entertainment, who made a lot of creature features which are nothing like the Transfiguration in terms of tone. Where the film kind of runs into trouble is that it reaches a point at which it has to become something more than a mood piece. And you have this plot line introduced in which Milo witnesses a murder on his estate and the police become involved. And it proceeds to a conclusion that to me felt like it would have been at home in a film made with 20 times this film's budget. You know, the premise of this film is very bold. I would have loved to have seen that boldness be carried over to all aspects of it. Also, in terms of tone, you know, I mean, it is morose, kind of unflaggingly morose to a point. I mean, the Twilight films, by contrast, look like Preston Sturges comedies. It's just, you know, it becomes wearing and it becomes too much. It's very, very serious. I also think by consistently quoting from films, you know, and have the character talking about films like Let the Right One In and like Martin that are just absolutely established masterpieces of the genre, it makes the film feel as if it's trying to insinuate its way into their company without ever really quite deserving it.